Hello and thank you for joining us again for another episode of Kidnapped Hearts, the weekly TV show brought to you by the International Criminal Court against Child Kidnapping. We are committed to bringing you the ugly truth about the corrupted family court systems and heinous crimes against children, which the government continues to turn a blind eye to. Today, we have an episode that you need to pay attention to, especially if you're a parent. We'll be giving you advice on how to safeguard yourself and your kids from the CPS. Oftentimes, these organisations tend to use the laws to their advantage and to your disadvantage. Or more aptly put, they know how to bend the laws to their benefit. The CPS, relevant professionals such as doctors, teachers, judges and their associated organisations have no problem with doing this. Every day, children are being taken away wrongfully from loving parents and homes. And if you have not yet woken up to the underhand dealings of how your children could be taken away from you when you've done nothing wrong, we strongly recommend that you watch our previous video. How the state profits from taking children away from their parents. Professor Paul Chill from University of Connecticut School of Law discussed this further in his 2004 scholarly article where he said, on an average day, police officers and child welfare caseworkers throughout the United States remove more than 700 children from the custody of their parents to protect them from alleged abuse or neglect. These children are typically seized without warning from their homes or schools, subjected to intrusive interrogations, medical examinations and/or strip searches, and forced to live in foster homes or group residences while the legal system sorts out their future. Removals can be terrifying experiences for children and families. Often they occur at night. Parents have little or no time to prepare children for separation. The officials conducting the removal, as well as the adults supervising the placement, are usually complete strangers to the child. Children are thrust into alien environments, separated from parents, siblings, and all else familiar, with little, if any, idea of why they've been taken there. Such experiences may not only cause grief, terror, and feelings of abandonment, but may compromise a child's very capacity to form secure attachments and lead to other serious problems. The trauma may be magnified when the child is actually suffering abuse or neglect in the home, and in any event, it is increased when reunification with loved ones does not occur quickly. According to statistics published by the US Department of Health and Human Services, more than 100,000 children who were removed in 2001, more than 1 in 3 were later found not to have been maltreated at all. And that is only the tip of the iceberg. Because definitions of maltreatment are extremely broad and substantiation standards low, it can be reasonably assumed that a significant number of other children who are found maltreated and for whom perhaps some intervention, short of removal, is warranted, are nonetheless removed on an emergency basis. So it's time for you to get wise and know how to stand up against a corrupt system. But before we go any further, as a disclaimer, we must stress that this episode is not about breaking the law or doing anything illegal. And even though not all officials are crooked, that does not mean that you should let your guard down. Nor are we lambasting the foster parents who open their homes to these children, as a lot of them are good people. Furthermore, whatever we say here should also not be viewed as legal advice. If in doubt, it's always recommended to speak to your lawyer. And if you do need legal help, you are welcome to contact our office where we can give you further advice. So, let's go straight into those things you need to be aware of when dealing with CPS. Be aware of what you say, as CPS will try to get you to talk and then use what you say against you. CPS will adopt methods where you'll get a false sense of them being on your side, but this is simply fake security, as the reality is that they are collecting evidence that they can use against you. Just keep in mind that everything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. Saying something as innocent as you've been a bit down because of work stress could be misconstrued as saying that you have mental health problems. If you say that sometimes you shout at your kid, this could be reported that you are verbally abusive to your child. To give you an idea of how much power they carry, almost 60% of reports made about child abuse or neglect are made by officials such as social services officers, police officers, teachers and medical staff. And as we already said earlier, more than 1 in 3 children were found to have not experienced any abuse after the traumatic accusation and investigation is made. You have the right to remain silent. Just remember, you have the right to the Fifth Amendment, which is the right to not answer any questions that may or may not incriminate you in any way. And this does not mean you are guilty of anything. It just means that you are simply protecting yourself. Despite how some parents are often treated, you do in fact have rights. If CPS randomly turn up at your door and you do not wish to speak to them, you can easily say that you would prefer to speak to them in a few days after you've spoken to your lawyer or found out more about your rights. Encountering problems with the CPS could potentially become a criminal prosecution. So again, when in doubt, it's best to talk about your situation with a lawyer to discuss your circumstances and rights further. You do not have to let CPS into your home. Contrary to popular opinion, CPS does not have the right to come into your house if you do not give them permission. You can even open the door for them to have a glimpse inside without letting them come in. If you tell them that they do not have permission to enter the house and they do so anyway, you can call your local police. On the other hand, if you did allow them to come inside, you also have the right to ask them to leave whenever you want. They cannot pry or look around your house or snoop through your drawers unless you give them permission. Do not allow them to make you feel intimidated. You can decline for your child to be interviewed by CPS. The reality is that CPS often tries to speak to your child before you, as in cases of real abuse. This is often the child's opportunity to tell them of any harm that has been done to them. If the child has injuries or bruises, they will want to make a record of those too before they heal. They are allowed to see your child without speaking to you first, and in this way, they may try to often see your child in their school, daycare, or any place like that. If, however, you find out about all this beforehand and you do not want to have your child interviewed, you can simply say no. And you can also leave something on the school's record to say that you do not give permission for anyone to interview your child unless you're there. Once you tell CPS that you do not give permission to have your child interviewed, they are unable to do so unless they have a court order from a judge or emergency circumstances, such as a child being in immediate danger. Even if they suspect the latter, the investigator must justify the claim in court within a 24-hour period. When there are two parents, they will try to get you to turn against each other. CPS is very skilled at nitpicking and getting you to both question yourselves. If the allegation is against one parent, they will then try to talk to the other parent over onto their side. Often, this can include guiding that parent to making misleading statements that can then be used in the case. They have even been known to use unscrupulous tactics such as using the suggestion that if the accused parent leaves, they may return the child to the remaining parent. What this is fueling is simply breaking up families who may be otherwise happy and law-abiding people. They will use your children against you. They are notorious for manipulating vulnerable and scared children into making admissions that may be innocent or may not even be true. They use a lot of leading strategies, which have been known to be employed in prisoners of war camps, where they lead the prisoners into making certain admissions. Yes, you heard me right. They will quite easily use such techniques on young and innocent children. And such tactics will be particularly effective on children because they are in an environment where they feel unsafe, scared, and traumatized. One such parent, Ostara, described this method on her site, saying, "Every time a CPS report gets filed against the target parent, the child gets interviewed about the target parent. While at first the child may not have a negative image of that target parent, after being questioned, even if it's about unfounded issues, the seed of doubt is created in the child's mind. This is a subtle but very effective way of alienating the parent to remove the target parent from the child's life. See, it wasn't me. CPS thought there was enough reason to investigate. The alienating parent doesn't tell the child the result of the investigation, which usually is unfounded, and the child perceives that persons of authority are questioning the safety of the target parent. The security and love the child feels for the target parent slowly and subtly erodes. And these are just small glimpses of how they can be mentally and emotionally causing further trauma to children and turning them against their innocent parents. Before you know it, one wrong word from either you or your child, and your child could be snatched away from you. No further questions asked. You have the right to an attorney. They might mislead you into believing that you do not need a lawyer and that all you have to do is cooperate with them and answer all their questions and everything will be okay again. But you have to keep in mind the first point we made on this video. Be aware of what you say, as CPS will try to get you to talk and then use what you say against you. Here's some more about what your legal parental rights are, as outlined by a family lawyer. At all times during an investigation by Child Protective Services, CPS, you have the right to legal counsel. You may want to have an attorney present with you during interviews with the caseworker. If you're going to be interviewed by the police, it is highly recommended you have an attorney present to ensure you do not incriminate yourself in some way. Your child can only be removed in limited circumstances. Your greatest fear is that your child will be taken away from you. However, CPS does not always have the right to take this drastic action. Removal of a child from their home is an extreme measure and only allowed under specific circumstances. For a CPS employee to take custody of your child, they must have a valid court order based on evidence that the child is in immediate danger. However, the police, a doctor, or the director of a hospital or medical facility may have the right to take your child into protective custody without a court order if there is evidence of imminent danger or pursuant to your or another adult's arrest. You have the right for your child to go to a friend or relative. If your child was removed from your home, the first option should be for your child to go to a capable relative or close friend's home. This is known as kinship care, and it is usually regarded as the best thing for the child. CPS must make a reasonable effort to place your child in a kinship care relationship, and you have the right to advocate for your child to go to a grandparent, aunt or uncle, cousin or close friend's home. You should provide CPS with possible adults' names and contact information. If kinship care is not possible, your child will be placed in foster care or a residential facility. If multiple children were taken, CPS needs to make an effort to place them together. If the children are separated, CPS must make a reasonable effort for visits between them, at least 2 per month, unless it is not in the child's best interests. Also, CPS should place the children in a foster situation that enables them to attend their same school unless it is not in their best interest. You can appeal your child's removal. You have every right to appeal the decision to take your child away from you. If your child was immediately removed based on an emergency and without a court order, then there must be a court hearing held within 72 hours. If your child was removed via a court order, then a disposition hearing must take place within 20 days. Whatever the process for removing your child from your home, an attorney will ensure that you appear in court at the appropriate time and have evidence to support your child returning home. You have the right to see and talk with your child. When your child is placed with a family, friend or in foster care, you have the right to see them unless a judge is presented with evidence that it would not be within your child's best interests. Usually, you'll be entitled to scheduled visits at least once per week. These visits may require supervision, such as by adult providing care for your child or a CPS care worker. You should also be allowed to speak with your children on the phone on a regular basis while they live somewhere else. You can appeal the final CPS decision. If the child abuse allegations are determined to be founded or substantiated, you have the right to appeal. Up to this point, you may have not had an attorney. You may have simply followed CPS directions and done what you thought was best. If you have not worked with a lawyer, now is the time to call and seek legal advice. You are most likely to successfully appeal a CPS decision with an experienced CPS attorney by your side. You have the right to fight to get your child back. Even if there was a negative outcome to the CPS investigation and your appeal, this does not mean you lose your child forever. You have the right to work with CPS to develop a family service plan, FSP, which outlines the steps you will take to improve the home environment and your interactions with your child. This may include completing parenting classes, anger management classes, drug or alcohol treatment, or therapy. Typically, you have 1 year to show that you have made positive changes and that your child should return home. If possible, try to find your own lawyer and not one that has been recommended by CPS. You need to have the right lawyer who will be willing to stand against CPS and not already be friends with them. This also is the same for any psychologist they may recommend for you or your child to see. It is better to get your own. It is also your right to be able to have access to your case files and copies of any accusations that were made. If they tell you otherwise, know that it is your right to have them. I encourage you to share this video with your friends and family. This is something that can affect parents and children everywhere, and we need to join in standing up against these injustices and to raise awareness. Well, that's all we have time for today on our show. Thank you for joining us again for another episode of Kidnapped Hearts. Tell us what you think on our Facebook page at facebook.com/childabductioncourt.org or on our Twitter page at childabductionc. You can also drop us a line at our website, childabductioncourt.eu, or in the comments section below this video. Be sure to tune in next week for another hard-hitting episode with nothing but the facts.